Howdy! Depending on how this video performs and how many of you like it, I think this video is going to be the first in a series of videos explaining the all-time PGP or slugging grades I've given certain quarterbacks. Now, for those of you who are new here, my thing, what I do, every week during the NFL season, I pick a couple games that are interesting and I break down every single snap of the All-22, diagramming it, charting what I find, taking notes on every play, and putting together grades for each of the starting quarterbacks in the NFL. And when I say starting, I don't mean like Drew Lock in Denver circa 2019. I mean like guys who matter. Guys who I think are probably going to be starting week 1 next year, or at least might. And I test my grading, my studies, by betting on football games. And every week, me and my co-host Alex release a podcast called Please Bet on Football Games, where I take my film evaluations and I create betting evaluations. I bet against the spread, and I've won 8 of the last 9 years. So it seems like I kind of know what I'm doing. Nonetheless, people still need a lot of convincing that what I'm doing makes any sense, because a lot of the time my results, my findings, are pretty different from what you would find if you were to just watch like NFL Live on ESPN, where analysts who watch most of but not all the primetime games give half-baked evaluations based on what they glanced at while looking up from their phone and putting down their beer. My thing is that I watch every snap. And when I say I watch every snap, I mean it. This week, I've had a little extra time, so I've been shoring up my all-time charts, which is where I keep all the notes from my film study. And I put together an algorithm, right? I call it PGP, performance grade points. Basically, every kind of play, I watch every play, separate it into categories, chart what happened on that play between the read the quarterback made, the throw they made, and how they navigated the pocket or ran. And then each one of those categories has a point value. Throw a card here with exactly how I do that and what all the categories kind of look like. The results go into big charts that are very colorful and some people hate, but I like, and they're for me. Today, I made sure that I have every single drop back from the beginning of the 2020 season, the COVID season for Patrick Mahomes, through the end of the season that just ended, 2024, graded. Every single one. And the findings are kind of what I expected, because I've been grading as I go, right? I mean, 90% of these games were already graded weeks, months ago, but not what I think the public consensus would be. I think it's time we talked about Patrick Mahomes, because his reputation is that of an elite all-time quarterback. Some people even think he's as good as Tom Brady. And frankly, I graded a couple Tom Brady seasons this week just to make sure my frame of reference was proper, and it's not close, like at all. So, without further ado, let's get into what I found. Overall, because we should start with the macro and we'll zoom in as we go. Overall, I have Patrick Mahomes as being accurate on 74.22% of his aimed passes, right? So, like, there's no need to grade a throwaway. We don't get a sense of how accurate somebody is when they spike the ball or throw the ball way over everybody's heads just to escape a sack. So I only grade passes that are aimed. And I also don't grade pop passes as passes, right? Those little, like, shove the ball slightly forward to your running back pass. That's not a pass. If your grandma can do it, it's not a pass. Furthermore, I don't grade those little swing pass, like toss up the gut things that they do to Travis Kelce all the time, especially at the goal line. I don't count that as a pass because it's just a toss. Again, if your grandma can do it, it's not an NFL pass. League average, and I've graded about 35,000 snaps from starting quarterbacks, plus a ton more from backups. League average is about 71%. It's pretty good. 74? It's above average. Now, a lot of those are what we call cheap plays. Cheap plays are screens, quick game, drags, mesh. Those really easy passes that you expect a backup to come in and make pretty consistently. Patrick Mahomes, about 45% of his passes are those cheap plays, and that's actually pretty normal. League average is about 47. And there's nothing wrong with a cheap play, a routine throw, a pedestrian throw. That's fine. Keeps the chains moving. Now, in order to be good, you have to do more than that. But that's a perfectly fine baseline. On his career, since 2020. So yeah, I don't have 2019 and 2018 in here yet, but that'll probably change pretty soon. Patrick Mahomes has an elite pass on 1.9% of his dropbacks. About league average. League average amongst these 20 starters who I have big, large samples for in their all-time PGP chart is 1.6. That's about average. Great throws, 4.1% of his dropbacks. That's pretty good. Again, league average is 3.8. So we're looking at like teeny tiny smidges above league average for these solidified starters. Solid 14.2, 12.3. That's where Patrick Mahomes is really best, is that 10 to 20 yard throw, that short intermediate. You know, it's not quite quick game. It's not quite, throwing the ball over the linebackers' heads. It's throwing to the sticks. And really, this is the Travis Kelce special, right? This is where he runs all those options and those hook routes that are just unguardable for some reason. And he's not moving that fast, and he didn't do anything that crazy, but he's always open. That's where the solid throws come in. And Mahomes is good at them. He is. This is doing a lot of work for his accuracy percentage. 42.1% of the time, if Patrick Mahomes drops back, takes a snap from under center, he's throwing a routine throw. Like I said, those aforementioned drags, swing passes, screens, short stuff, short of the sticks, not 5, maybe at most 8 yards downfield. RPOs, the easy stuff. What concerned me is that his accuracy isn't getting better over the course of his career, and you could argue might be getting worse. You see, 2020 to 2024, and again, that's 5 seasons. The guy's had 7 seasons as a starter. Yes, I'm missing his best season in 2018, but this is a pretty good sample of who he is and who he's gonna be. 19.2% of his dropbacks are inaccurate. That's a full percentage point more than the average of about 18.6%. So he's not very accurate. And he's not producing explosive, big plays at a crazy rate anymore. That's kind of worrisome to me. And then interceptable balls. He's protected the ball fairly well through the air. 2.5% of his dropbacks are interceptable. That's 81 balls that should have been intercepted over the last 5 years, but the average amongst these starters is about 3%. Negative sacks. These are sacks that I blame the quarterback for. Mahomes takes them slightly more than average, right? He doesn't take a lot of sacks that are the offensive line's fault because he's had really good offensive lines. He throws the ball away a ton because Mahomes, despite the fact he takes bad sacks that he really shouldn't, it's typically because he's doing way too much to avoid a sack. Because, let's get it out of the way now, Patrick Mahomes is the greatest pocket manipulator, escape artist, playmaker, play extender, improviser I've ever seen in my life. And sure, maybe like Norm Van Brocklin or Otto Graham or Sid Luckman, maybe they did some shit that I cannot comprehend. But I don't know. I can't find the All-22 on those guys. I don't think it existed until the 80s or 90s. And my film database from NFL Plus only goes back to 2012. So I guess I'll never know. But Mahomes is really good at escaping. Now, sometimes that leads to really bad sacks, just way too arrogant about his athleticism. Most of the time he gets away with it. He had a stretch of like 2 years where he didn't take a single sack while scrambling, and that's crazy. Fumbling, Mahomes fumbles at a league average rate. It feels like more because, frankly, Mahomes seems to throw an interceptable ball or fumble on plays that are called back by penalties way more than anybody else. And that's not just like, oh, league's rigged, blah. Like, It's partially because when he sees he has an offside or he sees he has a holding call, he tries funky shit. He tries to make a huge play because he knows he's allowed to make a mistake and he won't be punished. And that's really smart. It's what Aaron Rodgers mastered in Green Bay, and it's part of what made him such a great quarterback for so long. So part of that, which I think everybody who's not a Chiefs fan has noticed, part of that's real. Part of that is Mahomes doing things that create turnovers because he knows he can get away with it. Part of that is some really good fortune. Call it rigged, call it soft rigged, call it good luck. I don't know. That's somebody do an investigative piece on NFL referees. I'll read it. So I've graded 84 games of Mahomes' career, 3,305 snaps. That's a lot of film. That's like 100 hours of film, roughly. And my takeaway, he's an incredible playmaker. He's got a great all-time arm. It's not quite the Josh Allen tier. For a little while, people were like, who's got the stronger arm? Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. They should have a contest. It's not close. I think that Josh Allen's a full level above. I give Josh Allen an A+ on his range, velocity, all things related to arm strength. And I give Mahomes an A. Oh no, it's just one of the best we've ever seen. It's just not the best we've ever seen. And I think that Josh Allen's on that tier with like a Randall Cunningham, a Jeff George, a Jamarcus Russell. And arm strength, very obviously by that list, doesn't necessarily make a quarterback. There's a lot more that even goes into arm talent. So let's just break down Mahomes' arm talent. His range, his ability to throw the ball far, A. Elite, special stuff. He can throw the ball about 60, 65 yards, like with legitimate accuracy, not just a Hail Mary. It's awesome. He's on the same level as guys like a Baker Mayfield, a Justin Herbert. Herbert actually might be on that Josh Allen tier. He's close. Jordan Love, Justin Fields. Like, crazy arm, which is a hell of a start if you're building a quarterback. Additionally, on top of just how far you can throw it, there's how much zip you can put on the ball. Like, how fast can you drive a throw in? The ball speed on shorter throws, when you're throwing a bullet pass, like in Madden when you hold down the button. Again, A. Mahomes is really good at zipping the ball in there, and he doesn't do it that often because he also has great touch. Touch is when you take a little bit off the ball, make it more catchable, let it float in there for timing purposes, catchability purposes, etc. Mahomes is the rare quarterback who has a cannon arm and knows how to vary his velocity to kind of modulate it, to make it catchable. A- touch, like really, really good touch. The kind of touch you usually only see out of quarterbacks that have a weaker arm. The accuracy and precision are where we get tripped up. Now, accuracy is if you can hit the bullseye. Pause. Precision is how consistently you hit that bullseye, like grouping, right? Like if you do archery, if you hit one bullseye, you have great accuracy, even if the other 5 are all like barely hitting the target. Precision would be like all 5 of my arrows hit the same spot, even though it was very far away from the bullseye. So ideally, you'd have a quarterback with high accuracy and high precision. It means you're hitting a bullseye every time. Mahomes isn't really great at either. His ball placement, I give a B-. It's fine. It's not a problem. It's certainly not a strength. It's average. It might be a little below average. Same with his consistency of accuracy, his precision. You haven't seen a star quarterback miss so many screens, I promise you. It's kind of appalling. Like, it makes you take a step back and be like, especially after watching Tom Brady film, it makes you question, like, what are we doing here? This is not Tom Brady. He's missing the easy stuff, but there's way more to quarterback than hitting short passes. It's a holistic process grading a quarterback. Additionally, release, the final element of arm talent. Patrick Mahomes has a great release. Not just because he can get the ball out quickly, but because he can release the ball from any angle. We've seen him throw the ball parallel to the turf and throw it 40 yards. Now, the one in the Super Bowl that he threw directly at Devin White's hands was a pickable ball, but we're not measuring if that release always necessarily manifests itself in good plays, just how good is it? And if we're doing a skills competition, Mahomes can make throws that nobody else can make, partially because of that A release, that elite release. Next up, I want to talk about athleticism. Patrick Mahomes ran a 40 in the mid 4.7s. Like, he's not a great athlete. That being said, nobody can ever catch him. And it's like, in recent years, it's become a problem where he's like always pretending he's going to slide or dancing near the sideline. And so defenders will just pull up and not shove him out of bounds, not hit him. And that's cheap, right? Like, that feels wrong. But he's getting away with it, right? So, like, if we look at running backs, because we're most familiar with how running backs run, Le'Veon Bell wasn't that fast, and he wasn't even that strong, and he barely moved on a lot of plays because he was just squatting there, kind of, waiting for things to play out, and then picking his holes and running smartly. And he wasn't that fast, and he wasn't that strong, but he was a really good runner. Arian Foster with the Texans back in the day. Yeah, he was a beneficiary of one of the very first Shanahan systems. And he wasn't very fast, and he wasn't big, and he wasn't strong, but the vision, he was always running smart. And so Patrick Mahomes' mobility is an A- because his vision as a runner is incredible. And his slipperiness, his ability to trick defenders into not even trying to hit him is incredible. And, you know, he's had a 7-year career. He's almost 30. If you're looking at the totality of it, for the first 4 years, he outran dudes. Now, he doesn't outrun guys as much now as he used to, but he's still not slow. So the mobility's an A-. It's kind of special. And then the playmaking. The playmaking breaks the scale. S means super tier. Like, a Lamborghini is an awesome car. A Bugatti's a different thing. Patrick Mahomes, as a playmaker, is different than anything I've ever seen. It's even different from a Lamar Jackson or a Josh Allen, who are way better athletes and better runners with similar or better arms. But his spatial awareness, his mental aspects of his playmaking, his ability to understand where everybody is and how running left and doing a weird spin that makes no sense will open somebody else open at the right side of the field, 15 yards, and he doesn't need to look, he just, spin and chuck it behind the back, and they're open. That spatial awareness is what makes him so amazing as a playmaker, whereas a Lamar Jackson, yeah, you can't catch him, and you can't tackle him when you do catch him, and he's got a big enough arm that he can attack downfield once he breaks loose. That's crazy. But he doesn't have the release package, the off-platform throws. He doesn't have the spatial awareness of where his guys are. The mental aspect isn't on Patrick Mahomes' level because nobody's is. Ever. Like, call me a hater because I think Patrick Mahomes is overrated. That's the point of this video. You cannot denigrate his ability to make plays outside of structure. That being said, I think that Patrick Mahomes' mental traits do hold him back. As a pre-snap processor, I think he's about average for a starter. I give him a B. It's fine. It's solid. Good. Yeah. Like, he's not going to hold your offense back. He's not going to elevate it. If you tell him to run a play, he'll run the play, and he'll usually find the proper first read. His post-snap processing, I think, is a detriment to his game. I give it a C. Early in his career, this didn't manifest itself much, but as he's aged and as his receiving group has changed, it's really become a problem, which is backwards, because if you play Madden, you expect your quarterback to get smarter and smarter, his awareness to go up and up and up every year, because why wouldn't you get wiser as you get older? The problem is Mahomes doesn't think of plays in terms of plays. By his own admission, he didn't know how to read a defense until like a year or two ago. And if that's the case, he probably still doesn't know how to read a defense like a lot of quarterbacks you're familiar with. He's probably just doing the basics. And Andy Reid is a genius who has a really well schemed up, really structured offense, so it doesn't matter. He's not asked to do things like that. You know, like a Tom Brady or a Peyton Manning, they were told, go to the line with 3 or 4 plays in your head, read the defense, read the disguise, check into the proper play, adjust that play from there, and basically call your own offense. It's way more complex. Patrick Mahomes goes to the line with 1, maybe 2 plays. Andy Reid designed them and says, if it's zone, run this. If it's man, run that. And each one of those plays has a defined first read. It's really simple. Patrick Mahomes' problem is, at least for the first few years of his career, and honestly, he still does it, he doesn't so much think of plays in terms of what is the concept that's going to win on this play against this defense. He thinks of every play as, how do I get the ball to this guy who I trust? And for years, that guy who he trusts is Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, who were both Hall of Fame players in the prime of their careers, unguardable in both of their own rights. So you could have Tyreek Hill going deep and intermediate, and you can't cover him. And at the same time, you're going to have Travis Kelce going intermediate and short, and you can't cover him. So Patrick Mahomes basically went into every play thinking, how do I get the ball to Kelce or Hill? And that's probably how you should handle having those two superstar players. But when you don't have those two superstar players and you actually have to read plays, that's when it becomes a problem. Patrick Mahomes still doesn't do that. He starts every play thinking, how do I get the ball to Travis Kelce? And that's why, after Tyreek Hill's departure, Patrick Mahomes is throwing short way more than often. Like, way more than ever. Because Travis Kelce, A, is a little slower than he used to be. He's getting old. And B, he's a tight end. He naturally runs shorter routes. It's just the nature of the position. When you have Tyreek Hill and you have Travis Kelce, you don't have to think. You can just force the ball to them every play, and you don't have to process after the snap. Without them, you have to play real quarterback from the neck up. And he doesn't do that, and he still can't. That's why we've seen him struggle a lot. Now, when he has Rashee Rice in the slot, who's a really, really good receiver, it's better, but it's still not great. Maybe, Xavier Worthy becomes the next Tyreek Hill, and maybe this problem doesn't matter because the Chiefs find ways to mitigate it via elite special movers at the wide receiver position. But I would venture it's probably going to matter at some point because it's mattered for the last few years, and it's why the last 2 years Patrick Mahomes has been, dare I say, mediocre on the best days. He's a see-it, throw-it quarterback, not an anticipator or reader. So, yeah, Patrick Mahomes has to wait until he sees a guy get open because now that he can't just force every play to one of his two superstars, he's got to actually read defenses, but he's not good at it, and he doesn't really know what he's doing, so he just waits until they're totally open. And he can get away with that sometimes because he makes plays, he extends plays, he runs around in a circle with his head cut off like a chicken, and then boom, Travis Kelce's open down there somewhere, right? But that's not really a sustainable way of making plays forever. It works in crunch time, it works in big moments, but it's not sustainable. And when you're a quarterback, you have about 500 to 600 dropbacks a year. You got to be sustainable. If you can do something amazing 1% of the time, it means you do it 5 times a year. That's not enough. That's not enough. He when he works out of the pocket, he's brilliant. When he works in the pocket, he doesn't really know what he's doing. And he really zeroes in on his wide receiver 1 option or tight end 1. Granted, Travis Kelce doesn't really play tight end. He's a slot receiver at this point. That being said, Patrick Mahomes still can raise his game when it matters because there's still an elite quarterback in there. And when everything goes right mentally, you're going to have a hard time finding a guy who's better, right? Because if you were to just say, I guarantee you, I'm going to give you an average-sized wide receiver who's open downfield, running any route. Your quarterback has time. Somebody needs to hit him. Patrick Mahomes is one of the top probably 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. But that's not football. Football is handling the rush. Football is mentally managing all 21 other players on the field. Football is a lot of thought. It's chess, not checkers. That being said, it's going to sound contradictory. I just said Patrick Mahomes is one of the best at throwing down the field. His deep ball's really fallen off a cliff. So if we just go back to 2020, his deep ball was accurate a little under 50% of the time, 48% of the time. That's really good. League average is about 40, 44. So substantially above average. Since then, it dipped to about 30 in 2022. And I didn't grade his deep ball in 2023, but in the few games I have graded his deep ball, it's looking like it's going to be around 35. And in 2024, when I graded every deep ball he threw, we're down at 40%. So it's getting worse every year. So if I tell you that I got a quarterback who's not very accurate to the short areas of the field, because he's not, I give it a B, maybe a B+. It's not very good. And he's not hitting the big shots either anymore. And he's hitting 30, so the running is going to start to fade pretty quickly. That's how little has to change for a quarterback to go from being top of the league excellent to mediocre. Right? He loses a little bit of speed and starts taking a few more sacks that he shouldn't. And he stops hitting those big bombs to Tyreek Hill, who's now in Miami, getting pulled over. And suddenly, there's not a ton of reason for hope. That's why I think that I'm really comfortable coming out and saying this now. Because the last few years I've been saying, like, Patrick Mahomes is not the guy that we've crowned him. Like, he's not. 28, I loved Patrick Mahomes coming out of the draft, out of Texas Tech. I thought he was the best quarterback in that draft class. Now, that was before I started charting quarterbacks, before I even had the Twitter account I now have. But on my old burner, keeper of the real, I was bitching about how Mitch Trubisky and Deshaun Watson stink, and Patrick Mahomes is the only good quarterback in that draft. I thought he would be a B+ quarterback. And for a while, I was really happy, 2018, 2019, watching him with Andy Reid, my personal GOAT head coach, always has been. I was going to say always will be, but I'm really excited about Ben Johnson. And, Kyle Shanahan, and I love Mike McDaniel. I got my favorites. But Patrick Mahomes isn't that guy anymore. Because back then, he had a cannon arm and he hit the deep ball. Back then, he was just a little faster than he is now, and he ran a lot more often, a lot more willingly than he does now. Call it the money, call it the success, call it the fame, whatever it may be, it seems like a little bit of his passion has fallen off, a little bit of his focus has fallen off, and his game has really suffered because of it. Now, maybe if Patrick Mahomes gets in the best shape of his life and he really recommits himself, in a season or so, he can, rediscover that ability as a runner, assuming his body holds up. And if he really dedicates himself now, in 2 to 3 years, he can move that mental detriment he's working from, because he's just a little below average as a thinker of the position. He's only 30. He's got time. Working with Andy Reid, he could probably get that up to average or even a little above average. And if you have an above average brain with a killer arm, you could do a lot of damage. But I think that Patrick Mahomes is on the significant downswing, and I think that any talk of him being on Tom Brady's level is crazy, because really, all of Patrick Mahomes' accolades have come in the last 5-6 years. And over those last 5-6 years, he's been a B- quarterback. He's been a franchise quarterback for sure. Now, pause. B- sounds like a bad grade, because if you got a B- on your spelling test, your mom would probably be pissed. And if she wouldn't, yikes. But I grade on a curve, which means a C is average. If you are a dead C, average C, 2.0 GPA, you are the average starting quarterback in the NFL to me. If you're a C+, you are a low-end franchise quarterback. The classic, like, Kirk Cousins, Andy Dalton, Dak Prescott tier of, like, he's a starting quarterback, and we do not necessarily need to move on. But we're not going to do much. We're not going to win a ton of big games. And like, when he hits 30, maybe we actually kind of do need to start thinking about moving on. And half the fan base thinks he's underrated, and half the fan base thinks he's terrible. That's that 2.3 C+ range. When you get into the B-, you're looking at, like, there's not a lot of B-. Like peak Deshaun Watson, like peak Derek Carr. Patrick Mahomes is at the very top of that tier, right below the B tier, which is like, who's a really good B- is Ryan Tannehill. Notice I'm naming a lot of guys who didn't have elite offensive minds as their coach, right? If you stick one of these guys with Andy Reid, I think we get similar production over the last 5 years. And now, don't get it twisted, this is an average. In 2020, Patrick Mahomes had a 2.65 average GPA. That puts him at a B+ on the year, right? You throw away a couple of outliers, it's like a 2.8, 2.9 grade on the year. That's fucking killer, right? That is top 5 in the league, top 3 in the league. That is awesome, right? Or like in 2023, or 2022, rather, the first year without Tyreek Hill, a 3.06 GPA on the way to a Super Bowl. That's killer. That's awesome. That puts you at like a 3.2 grade for the year after throwing out outliers. 3.2, we're talking A-, Hall of Fame type shit. And that means that 2018 and 2019 were probably A to A- years. Like really great years. But the elite of the elite, the top end quarterbacks never have C+ years like 2023, C to C+ years like 2024. Like, there's just too many lulls, and it seems to be getting worse way too rapidly. 2021, C to C+ year. Half of his career has been average football. So yeah, his highs are incredible. And when he has good years, they're as good as most anybody's. Not Tom Brady's, of course, but most anybody's. I just think that his production, his numbers, his stats are significantly inflated just by being in one of the most brilliant schemes of all time, if not the most brilliant scheme of all time. I think that he's fairly replaceable compared to what people assume. Like, people think Patrick Mahomes, they think like, oh my God, if he were to go down, the Chiefs would be nothing. No, I think if they had an average backup quarterback, they'd be fine. Like, not good, but fine. Now, I don't know if Carson Wentz is an average backup. I don't know if Chad Henne is an average backup. But those are beside the point. In the end, I think that Patrick Mahomes is just living a little bit off of reputation right now. It's not that he's bad. It's not that he doesn't do anything well. It's that he does some things really, really well. It's just he doesn't do them very often. And he does them increasingly less often. And increasingly too often, he has legitimately not good, dare I say, bad seasons. And so I'm starting to wonder, as he hits 30, as his legs start to go, have we already seen the best we're ever going to see from Patrick Mahomes? And has he made his last Super Bowl? Because the AFC just keeps getting tougher, and the gap between guys like Josh Allen and guys like Patrick Mahomes is growing, and not in Mahomes' favor. Whereas Mahomes really hasn't improved mentally, Josh Allen's been getting a lot better mentally every year and is still way more physically talented. So no, Josh Allen doesn't have an Andy Reid. But that's not really affecting his performance. Might affect his wins and losses, certainly affects his production. But if we're just looking at who's a great quarterback, I think it's time that Patrick Mahomes drops out of the top 5. I don't think you can put him in the conversation with some of these guys like a Josh Allen, like a Justin Herbert, who are carrying their teams. I don't think this past year he was as good as Lamar Jackson or even rookie Drake May. I know he made the Super Bowl again. How'd he look? Did he blow your mind when he was almost losing to Houston or when he got blown out by Philadelphia? He always looks good against Buffalo. I will give him that. But I grade quarterbacks on a little bit more than wins and losses. In Patrick Mahomes' case, I grade him off of 3,305 snaps and his 43% deep ball accuracy and his B- grade point average and his pretty average underlying metrics through and through. So, what do you think? Am I missing something? Please don't just comment to hate me. That's not very nice. And let me know. Do you guys like these kinds of videos? If so, subscribe, hit a like, throw a comment in there that says this is the kind of stuff I want to see more of in the off season. Because frankly, I'm going to have some free time these next couple weeks, and I don't really know what to put on this channel if I'm not making the podcast with my picks or breaking down regular season and playoff games. So, I just said playoff like a third grader. But with that, I guess I'm just going to keep grinding ancient film. Asta.